You know, one of the things that I see quite a lot is that people struggle to make the time they need to learn the original languages. Everybody's really enthusiastic about learning Greek and learning Hebrew. Well, maybe not everybody, but a number of people are. But then when you get into it, you realize that it actually takes quite a bit of time and it's hard to do that. So in this video, I want to give you 5 tips, 5 key things you need to do to be able to set aside the right amount of time to be able to learn Greek or Hebrew regardless of your current circumstances and with the amount of time you have available today. Okay, so let's get into it in this video. And this video is really designed for anybody, regardless of whether you're learning Greek or Hebrew. This will apply to both equally well. And there's just 5 key tips that you can implement right away that will give you more time to actually be able to spend on your Greek or on your Hebrew. Okay, so the first tip that I want to explain today is, first of all, establish the right mindset. Establish the right mindset. And I've talked about mindset before on this channel, and you can find videos on that if you search around. But here's the thing you need to really understand is that Greek and Hebrew, both of these are skills that need to be developed. These aren't like regular courses that you can just wander up, read a book, and now you know that material and you can just kind of do it, right? These are skills you're developing, which means it takes time to develop those skills. You're going to suck at it to start with because everybody does. First time you pick up a hammer, if you're going to go and become a builder, you know, chances are you may not even hold the hammer correctly, right? And so it's the same with Greek and Hebrew. When you learn these, you start, it's clunky, it's difficult, it's awkward. But as time goes on, you get more proficient with the tools and your skills develop and you get better at it, okay? So this is a skill to develop. And so in that sense, you want to give yourself time to develop those skills and recognize that it's consistency using the skills that's going to help you to develop the right ability, the ability you're aiming for with what you're trying to achieve. So Greek and Hebrew are skills to develop, and that means that it's going to take time to develop those skills. So you want to give yourself expectations of how long it's going to take. And with Biblical Mastery Academy, we believe you can get through beginning Greek in 6 months and Hebrew in less than a year. And certainly you can be well beyond Greek and Hebrew within a year than what I've just mentioned as well. So you can be well through beginning Greek and beginning Hebrew in less than a year if you would like to. And the other thing with developing the right mindset is just to realize just how much of a privilege it is to be able to read the original languages at all. Most of church history, we have people who don't have access to the kind of tools that we have today, and so that people will never learn these languages. And so take time as you learn just to be thankful for the opportunity to learn. So start off by setting or establishing the correct mindset, which is to say it's a skill to develop, it's going to take time to learn, and you want to be thankful as you go through that. The second thing to do to ensure you have enough time to be able to learn Biblical Greek is really to create the time in your schedule. And I know this is where everybody says to me, well, that's easier said than done. But let me just give you this. I believe, and consistently I have seen this in the students that I've taught, that it's mornings that are the best time to learn the languages. And there are a number of reasons why this is the case. First of all, mornings are the one time you have the most control over, right? You have more ability to control your time in the morning because there are fewer people up and out of bed early in the morning. You can set your alarm and be up before everybody else is. You're going to have fewer interruptions. And another reason that mornings are really good is that it's also going to mean that you're going to have some runs on the board before you even start your day, which means you're going to feel good about what you've achieved throughout the day, even if the rest of the day doesn't go to plan, right? At least you've achieved this one thing that you were working on that's a personal goal that is about developing these particular skills. So mornings are the best time, in my opinion, to develop your knowledge of the languages. And I know what people are saying right about now as you're listening to me say, mornings are the best time. Yeah, but I can't think for the first 3 hours of the morning. Or, you know, I suck in the mornings. Mornings are hard. I can't get up on time. There's a whole bunch of reasons why mornings are impossible, right? But let me give you some tips for how to use mornings particularly, but anytime really. These principles, the principles behind these will apply to any time you set aside. And the key thing here really with this piece is to set aside time in your schedule. And I think mornings are the best time to do that, but you can set aside any time. If you're an evening person, then that might be the best time. If you're a morning person, if you're a daytime person, you can carve out, you know, a couple of hours in the middle of the day, maybe while kids are sleeping or something like that, then that's fine. Just work with whatever time you've had, but set aside that time. But if you are interested in using your mornings, let me give you some quick tips here to ensure you have more time in the morning than you might otherwise have right now. First of all, adjust your bedtime so that you give yourself more wake-up time, because really what we're doing is we're shifting our sleep time back a little bit so that we've got this extra time here in the morning, which means that if we're going to get up half an hour earlier, we need to go to bed half an hour earlier. And again, this may take time to develop, but you've got on our phones these days, we've got these abilities to actually set our bedtime and then have our phone remind us, and it encourages us to have a wind down period. And I really want to encourage you to use this wind down period as well. So turn off all your screens, pick out just a regular book and just open it up and just read it for 30 minutes. It doesn't even have to be that, 10 minutes before you go to bed. It's just going to help your mind sort of change its focus from I'm in the day to I'm winding down and I'm finishing my day, closing this day out. As you establish that, your mind will start to get into this process of I'm putting aside time now in order to start that process of going to bed. So you're building habits around bedtime, earlier bedtimes, so that you're able to go to sleep. And the other thing with turning off screens, and the reason I say that is because screens typically emit blue light. That blue light is used by your brain to tell your brain and your body that actually it's daytime and it's time to be awake. So by turning off your screens, you limit those signals that say, hey, it's daytime and you should still be awake. I don't know if you've ever sat up at night and watched TV and you get to this point where you're just watching and watching and you're completely tired, you're exhausted, but yet you keep watching and you're not falling asleep because part of the reason is that that blue light is saying to your brain, stay awake, stay awake, stay awake, it's still daytime. So turn off the screens and get to bed a little bit earlier. And to help you with that, perhaps even consider turning down your lighting, adjusting the lighting in your home so that it's dimmer, not as bright. And again, it's just going to help your body get used to the fact that it's actually dark and nighttime, and therefore it's time to go to sleep. The other thing you can do to help yourself get up in the morning is to set your alarm in 90-minute blocks. I don't know if you know this, but you sleep in 90-minute cycles. So every 90 minutes, your sleep cycle begins again, which means at the end of that 90 minutes, your body is best attuned to wake up. Okay, so you've been through a full cycle and your body is ready at that point to wake up. Now, you want to give yourself at least, I say at least 3 cycles a night, preferably 4 cycles a night, which is about 7 hours. Okay, now we all have different sleeping amounts and we all sleep differently, but work in those 90-minute cycles and time your alarm to go off so that it goes off at the end of one of those 90-minute cycles. The benefit of that is that when you wake up then, you're not in the middle of a sleep cycle, so you don't feel so groggy, right? So if you wait to the end of the sleep cycle, when you get to the end of that sleep cycle, your body is starting to wake up anyway. It's shifting through those cycles and it's in that place where your sleep is the lightest, so waking up at that time means you're going to feel less groggy than you would if you're in a deeper period of sleep, which would be earlier in that cycle. So set your alarm based on those 90-minute sleep cycles, and then when you do that, you should feel a little bit less groggy when you wake up. There's nothing worse than having an alarm go off when you're in the middle of a deep sleep piece of that cycle. That's when we all feel really groggy. So you want to wait till the end of one of those 90-minute cycles. Furthermore, when you get to the end of one of those cycles and you do wake up, you want to get yourself into a habit of getting up pretty much right away. Don't mess around. Get dressed, have a shower if you need to, have a cold shower. That will often help wake you up. It might be a bit hideous to do that, but maybe a cooler shower perhaps or something like that. But even if you don't do that, here's a few things you want to do when you do wake up. You know, get up, brush your teeth, freshen up the feeling in your mouth, have a drink, hydration. You lose like a huge amount of moisture overnight just by sleeping and not doing anything. So get up and have some water, at least 12 ounces or, you know, a cup and a half if you like, if you're going to be doing it. You make sure you hydrate well when you wake up so that again, it's going to get your brain starting to flow much more quickly than even coffee will as well. Once you've done that, you might even want to consider doing some little bit of exercise, maybe just a couple of push-ups. It doesn't have to be a lot. It just needs to be enough just to get the blood pumping through your body so that you're starting to tell your body, okay, today is the day we're waking up, we're going to get into this, we want to get moving right away so that we're prepared for what comes. And bear in mind that when it comes to sleep and waking up, it's the first 5 minutes that are the worst. And so if you can build a routine to get yourself through that first 5 minutes so that you're able to get through that and then into something like your Greek or Hebrew, then you're going to have a higher degree of success than if you just sort of allow that 5 minutes to drag into 10 minutes and 15 minutes and 20 minutes. Recognize that that first 5 minutes is going to be hard, anticipate that, and set in place some things you're going to do to make sure that you get through that as quickly and efficiently as possible. And you don't want to do that the day before rather than the day when you're in that 5-minute period, right? So first of all, establish the habit. Secondly, you want to create the time in your schedule. And as part of that, you want to protect that time as well. How do you do that? Well, before I go on and explain how to protect that time in your schedule, let me just encourage you, if you're getting value out of that, to hit the like button and the subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed to this channel so you get more videos just like this as well. All right, let's talk about how to protect that time in your calendar so that you can make the most of it. So we want to start by identifying distraction. So if you're using your morning, for instance, what sort of things are going to prevent you from using that early morning period of time? It could be sleeping in. It could be social media. It could be, interruptions that you might get from, say, a news feed or something else going on. Whatever it is, just write a list of all the things you think may distract you in that time to prevent you from using that time for the purpose that you're setting it aside. And then the second thing you want to do is not just identify those distractions, but then for each of the distractions you identify, make a note of how are you going to mitigate those distractions. So for instance, if sleeping in is the problem, then what could you implement in the list of things that I've just mentioned a moment ago about how you can adjust your morning routine so that you don't sleep in and so that you're fresh when you get to that time? Or maybe the issue is children are potentially going to be a distraction to you. How can you set aside that time so that the children do not interrupt you during that time? It could be that you have them down perhaps for a nap, depending on their age, or it could be perhaps that, maybe there's something you can sort of set up for them so that they can be in one room, maybe watching some educational television program while you're in another room working away on your Greek or on your Hebrew. Whatever it is, think about how can I mitigate for each of these distractions that I've identified so that I have this time set aside well. And if you do this beforehand, it means that in the middle of it, you're not fighting those distractions because you've already planned to mitigate those distractions before you get to that time, so you can just focus on using that time and using it well. Maybe the distraction that you're thinking of is that I'm just not going to be at my best at that time. Thinking about early mornings and using those. Well, let's just talk about that for a moment. If you're thinking you're going to have a groggy mind first thing in the morning, maybe your wake up time needs to be just a little earlier. Maybe you need to have maybe something to drink, or maybe just something light to eat. But don't eat too much before you go into one of these times, because when we eat, our blood moves from the whole body to primarily the stomach, which means that then it's working on digestion and so on. So that draws blood flow away from our brain, and so we really want to keep the blood flow in our brain. So having a meal before we get into those times can be unhelpful. So just bear things like that in mind and just set aside time before you do this to actually think through how can you mitigate those things that are going to hold you up and prevent you from using that time effectively. So the fourth thing you can do to ensure that you are learning Greek and you've got the time and you're setting aside that time is to make sure you've got the right habits that you're establishing and using in that time. And I've done a whole video just on this that I'll leave a link to up here. There are 4 key things, 4 steps that you need to take to master any chapter of beginning Greek, and the same will work with Hebrew as well. So essentially you want to use that time that you've set aside to work on these 4 things effectively. And those 4 things were vocabulary, passing. All right, let me just take those 2 to start with, and I'll come back to the other 2 in a moment. These are 2 things you can do on your mobile device. So basically, whenever you would get your mobile phone out normally, why not actually use that time to actually do your passing or to do your vocabulary? So in other words, rather than use that block of time you've carved out to do vocab and passing, just any time during the day when you'd normally have 5 minutes to spare when you're waiting in line for a coffee at Starbucks, or when you're waiting at the DMV for something, or when you're at your lunch hour, just grab your mobile device and just start working through your vocabulary and your passing apps to practice those things before you do anything else, and then make those other things you might want to do a reward for finishing those elements that you're working through with your passing and your vocabulary. So Instead of using your early morning time that you set aside perhaps to go through and do your passing and your vocabulary, do that during the day, do that afterwards, and use this block of time you're setting aside for these other two things, which are specifically learning the material that you need to learn in this chapter, which could be watching the videos that you provide. We provide videos in Biblical Mastery Academy, or it might be reading the chapter of the book. That sort of material, that's the time you want to do that, in that time you're setting aside, that 1 hour block. And then the other thing you want to do there is to actually use that time for going through paradigms, rehearsing those paradigms. It's probably one of the first things you want to do, to remember and review what you've learned previously, and then prepare and learn the new concepts that you're learning for this next step, and then go on and do some translation exercises as well. And I wouldn't go through and do all the translation exercises all at once. Do like 3 or 4 a day, and you should get through all of the translation exercises for any given chapter during the period of a week. And so then whenever you come back to that block of time, you want to spend a little bit of time going through those paradigms, going through your translation, and that way you should get through all of that material during that one block of time. The only other thing I would add to that is that perhaps in your wind down time in the evening, that might be a great time to write out some of those paradigms from memory as well, just to review them before you go to sleep at night. Okay, so use that block of time particularly for the translation and for the paradigms, and also for learning the material in the book or the videos that you are working through. Okay, so develop the habits. That's number 4. Number 5 then is chain those hard things to do to easy things that you already do. And what I mean by this is that you've already got habits that you go through during the day, right? All we're asking you to do here is just to take those habits you already do and consciously add to them a step of, say, reviewing your vocabulary, or reviewing your passing app, or whatever it happens to be. Or even in the morning, you sit down, maybe right now, you sit down first thing in the morning, you have your cup of coffee and you read your newspaper. Well, let's change that. So rather than read your newspaper, you're actually reading the book of the Greek, grammar that you're working through, so that we're just making a slight modification to what you already do that's then going to feed directly into your desire to learn the languages, so that you're able to get straight into that block of time that you've set aside early in the morning. So take something you already do and chain new ideas, new events, new habits to that, and establish those over a period of time. And as you do that, you'll find that the time you set aside is easier and easier to do, because it becomes ingrained into your regular habits. So those are the 5 habits that we want to encourage you to do. Establish the right mindsets, create the time and set it aside, anticipate distractions, develop good habits in the time that you've set aside, and then daisy chain to existing habits, new habits that are going to help you to be consistent in the language learning. So if you've found these helpful, let me know in the comment section below, which of these are you going to implement first to help you get more time to learn Greek or Hebrew? And let me know in the comment section below. I look forward to hearing from you there. And if you've got another tip that you think would be helpful for having more time to learn Greek or Hebrew, then again, leave that in the comment section below. I look forward to reading it there as well. If you haven't already signed up to learn Greek or Hebrew and you'd like to do that, join our mailing list by signing up and getting our free roadmap to mastery which is part of our starter pack. You'll find that at bma.to/starter pack. So just jump down there, click that link, and you'll be able to find that in the description below. And I look forward to serving you inside the membership. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, keep taking small, consistent steps toward mastery. We'll see you there.